recorded in front of a live studio audience. This is Weapons of Meme Destruction podcast with Dane and David.
Oh, was that it? Are we
that was it.
jumping in?
I didn't have anything else.
Oh, all right.
And Tits McGee.
Listen.
I don't know. There's no one else. Like, shit. Help me out here.
Tits McGee is downstairs. All right. So you know what? Just before we jump in, I just want to pop it off the top of this esophagus.
Nice.
By giving some kudos to somebody who the normal Weapons of Meme Destruction viewers and listeners probably did not expect. But let it never be said about Weapons of Meme Destruction that...
Fair and balanced.
Exactly. Or that it's not. Wait a minute.
Wait,
we do want it to be said that it's fair and balanced.
Wait, hold on.
We don't want to be said that it's not.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. Ask Fox.
And Exhibit A for our fairing and balancingness is
I think so.
We're going to throw out some kudos to Gavin Newsom.
Oof.
For you first-time listeners and viewers and, political rock sitters, that is the governor of California.
And it's not just his great set of follicles he's got protruding out of his skull. The guy has great hair.
He does have good hair.
He has fuck. If there's a politician with a better set of hair, I'd like to see him.
What's his name? Josh Hawley, senator.
The one that did the questioning this?
Yeah.
And he's got
hair.
it together. I will say, like, if there was a calendar of politicians, aside from...
His suits actually fit him.
Oh, my fuck.
Unlike some of those guys...
Not just fit him, but...
Some of those guys look like they're walking around like,
it's just like
Penguin from Batman.
Right, exactly. Or like fucking like a shitty lawyer from the 90s with like a box goddamn thing on
Anyway, not to have another hour and a half long episode like 102.
Who's your favorite congressman or woman? Get in the chat. Tell us what.
Gavin Newsom had something rather lucid and intelligent to say. I know. Shocker. But it is on a rather important issue, so we want to do our service to the American people and give him kudos for it. Gavin Newsom had this to say when confronted by his own party, at least nominally speaking, people on the left. It seems like he's being attacked from the left. But he said he came out in opposition to the idea of packing the Supreme Court. And as you know, the AOCs of the world can't push this agenda fast and hard enough, consequences be damned. But Newsom had this to say.
That's how you get in sticky situations.
David,
sorry.
Too soon in the episode.
Couldn't help it.
Newsom had this to say, and I think this is a very lucid statement which encapsulates the whole issue. He said, quote, "Because my kids are going to live with a Supreme Court that's larger than Congress." And the reason why that's such an intelligent thing to say and courageous, again, considering that, he's a darling of the political left. He's a very likely potential presidential candidate for the Democrats and stuff like that. So to come out against your own side on that is a rather courageous thing to do on his part on this one particular issue. So kudos to him. But really what he's getting at there is, yeah, you want to pack the Supreme Court? Go ahead and start a nuclear arms race, politically speaking anyway, because then when there's more Democrats than Republicans on the court, then the Republicans are just going to pack it with Republicans. And then eventually, as he says, you're going to have a massive Supreme Court, which is completely devoid of any sort of relevancy whatsoever, because you're going to have 456 opinions per issue.
Or like we always say on the podcast, if you've been listening at all, the door always swings back twice as hard. So careful where you push it.
So it's very easy, and politicians do this all the time. If something is wildly popular in their segment of the political spectrum, they just jump on, no questions asked. But at least it looks like Gavin Newsom took 5 seconds to analyze this issue and go, wait a minute. I don't know if I want to get in this, political tit for tat where we wind up with, as he says, a Supreme Court larger than Congress. Which sounds silly now.
It's like a Cold War.
Not impossible.
In Congress.
Yeah.
Or in Capitol Hill or on Capitol Hill.
It's been said, not by me, I'm just kind of regurgitating it from people more intelligent, but it's been said that we have probably had in this country going on for at least the past 20, 30 years, a soft civil war going on. There's no bullets flying or, there's not any sort of the atrocities of war, tacking on to what's been going on.
We're like neighbors.
But the way our politics is, the direction that it's trending is I need to grab political power so that I can crush my enemies.
My hedge is hanging over your fence and you don't like it, so you throw your dog turds into my yard.
Yeah.
That's basically what's going on.
Yeah. And eventually that turns into bullets. We hope not, and that cooler heads can prevail. But again, best to be a warrior and a gardener in a garden than a gardener in a war. To regurgitate that one from last week.
You've been regurgitating a lot this episode. So
I better stop doing that.
Before you regurgitate again, you want to get into the episode?
Yeah, I think we should.
Okay.
Welcome to Weapons and Meme Destruction Podcast, episode 103, which can be found at wmdpodcast.com/103. You can get it on any podcast catcher, Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify, and anything else in between. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. And you can also find the videos on YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey, and then link up with us for more content on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. David, that was flawless.
It's almost like we've been doing it for 103 episodes.
I know. We're getting
getting
her down.
You're getting her down pat.
All right. So on today's episode, or today's segment of the Culture Corner, on this episode, we have what I think is a rather... I'm choosing to focus on the good outcomes of this. I don't know how David feels about it. I guess we'll find out. We'll find out together. But what it is a reel published by the BBC. So it's news, but it's like in video format instead of text. And the title of the article, and it was from February of this year, is called "What If Women Never Had to Give Birth Again?" And
we would never get nagged all over the fucking internet. Well, I have to give birth. I have the hardest job. So what are you guys going to complain about now? Their periods. That's all they're going to have.
As you can see, David is going to the higher level of this particular topic.
I always take that
in terms of the discourse.
You don't understand. Well, why don't you have the baby? Push it out of your pee hole.
So the video, which is about 7.5 minutes long, again, you can get the link at www.podcast.com/103 in the show notes if you want to go watch the video yourself. But it's talking to some experts in the field about the recent technological advancements in what is called ectogenesis, which is growing of human babies outside of the womb.
Sounds gross.
An artificial womb, so to speak. And we're already...
Hold on. You know what the next question is going to be, right?
David, can I even introduce the topic before? But no, go ahead. Tell us what the next question is going to be.
Every man's going to look at it and go, yeah. Can you fuck it?
David,
That's going to be the only answer. If we ratify this thing, it's going to be like, can you?
I'm pretty sure that, no. I'm pretty sure nobody's going to be asking that question.
I think you underestimate exactly where mankind's going. Anyway, go ahead.
So anyway, scientists have already been doing this with sheep. I believe they've brought I don't know how developed the embryo was when they transferred it to the artificial, but they brought the sheep to full gestation. And this can have consequences in terms of what?
I was going back from my previous joke. Can you fuck it? And you brought up a sheep. And my mind went to a certain place. Because you can with a sheep, apparently.
Jesus, David.
Sorry. Anyway, I didn't say the joke.
As you can see, yeah, you didn't say the joke.
I didn't.
You want to hear my joke?
Go ahead, Dave.
I don't think Oklahoma is too populous. All right, forget. I'm going for it. Okay. I'll probably never win any electoral votes in the state of Oklahoma.
Go ahead.
Ever in my career, but
these are just Kansas jokes.
That's right. A little bit of sibling rivalry.
Yeah.
Do you know what they call safe sex in Oklahoma?
I do, but I'm going to act like I don't. What is that, Dane?
They paint a red dot on the back of all the sheep that kick.
Boom! You've been weapons of being destructed. All right? Take that, Oklahoma.
Oklahoma, I apologize, but I don't. Boomer loser. Anyway, David, you had something to say about
I already said it.
Oh, was that your joke?
The sheep. Yeah, basically, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Sheep fucking is my joke.
Anyway, listen, I'm not going to give any more details on it. You can watch the video. We're just going to get into David and I's takeaway because with the jokes, everything has gone too far already. Should probably cut this episode off right now. All right. So here's what I thought when I immediately read this, and many of you probably thought the same thing. This is the only viable solution to the abortion debate. Now, you can have your moral disagreements as a matter of religion or whatever. What I tell people all the time is my opposition to abortion is completely secular based. Basically, science defines a zygote as human life. And if I apply the libertarian non-aggression principle, then from the zygote stage forward, it has the same right to life as anybody else. However, I acknowledge that on libertarian grounds exclusively, somebody can also make the argument validly that the woman's bodily autonomy is being invaded. So there is no philosophical solution to this issue which divides us. So I've always fell back on, I hope that technology eventually fixes this problem for us. And if this is possible, then in a not too distant future, according to the people in this video, women will be able to say, I don't want to carry this pregnancy to term, transfer the baby to an artificial womb, give it the same right to life that it deserves as any other human being, but her wishes of not being a mother and carrying a pregnancy to term, etc., are also acknowledged. And this would be the only way to balance out these two competing interests. That's my white pill take on this whole thing. I gather David has a different takeaway.
And what would you call that pill, Dane?
A black pill. If it's negative, if it's a scary dystopian type future.
African American pill, please.
God.
It gets better. Anyway, yeah, I'd say my African American pill is a little more cynical, but it's more human. I'd say that if you can just start creating life with just genetic material, then you don't need human contact anymore. Then it's not unique within our own, being a member of mankind kind of experience. So it kind of demeans the creation of life and what that actually meant. And it takes a real fucking weird turn out of the cycle, the food chain. Like the Darwinian, the strong survive and the non-survivable traits are left behind. So, and then also I got really dystopian when you said that, okay, if a woman that gets pregnant says that I don't want to have this, remove that from me and put it in another womb, who's going to raise that kid? Does that just become the government's baby? Because if it's just the government's baby, who said that that's going to be raised in any kind of humane fashion whatsoever? We already know they put kids in cages.
Yeah.
What are they going to do to little test tube babies or virtual womb babies? So there's a lot of human implications.
Or will they start using them for organ harvesting and all kinds of stuff? Now that particular issue that you raise, or some of the other sort of bioethics issues that are, some of them are brought up in this video, and it's definitely not a clean break. It's not like, yay, technology comes along and save us. Much like, nuclear energy. It has the capacity to give us endless energy and have zero carbon emissions for the rest of eternity. The total green future that the Greenpeacers would want. However, that same technology can be used to basically put us into a nuclear winter and create a mass extinction event on Earth. If government's control of it goes the wrong way. So I'm not saying that, and I know you're not suggesting I'm saying that, that this issue is like, oh, technology comes along and now it's all rainbows and lollipops and stuff. There are a lot of legitimate concerns like that, which I share those same concerns.
How many times?
I just think that in the creation of the technology, there might be and again, this might be very Trojan horse because once they get me and a lot of people to think like me, then they have it and they do all the bad things we're talking about. I understand that. The whole just because we can doesn't mean we should argument. I 100% with you. I'm just saying that abortion is one of those issues which is used by the power elite to keep us divided so successfully because it is such a divisive issue that to any extent that we can kind of make that issue obsolete in terms of fighting with each other over it, I think that's a net positive for society, not constantly being at each other's throats.
And just to try to tie this one up as well as I can, how many times is Jurassic Park going to be predicting a predicator of what happens in human history?
This guy makes a lot of Jurassic Park references on this show.
How many times does it come up? How many times have I gotten chased by a raptor in my life? 0. I've gotten chased 0. But how many times does all the pragmatic stuff within Jurassic Park come up? Like, we're always so concerned with whether we can. We never focus on whether we should. And you just bringing up bioethics. How many classes did you take in bioethics? How many classes are there available in bioethics? How long have we been studying bioethics?
Sure you can major in it, though, no?
I didn't see it on my core list. Of course,
there's called bioethics experts, so presumably
and how much do we
there's got to be
about? Yeah, last week we called a fucking fat reporter an expert in Diet Coke. I'm sorry, that cited herself in her own review.
She wasn't fat. Michael Moore was fat. From what I could tell from her pictures, she was.
She
in
wrote
shape.
like a fat person. Have you ever read something that sounds fat? I have, and it was that goddamn article. Anyway, not
David.
fat shaming. It's fine.
We're sorry in advance, YouTube. Please don't
Don't remove us, please. Anyway, all I'm saying is we're so far down the rabbit hole, and we haven't even figured out like how to find where the hole was that we entered the rabbit hole. So I'm just saying, maybe move a little slower, maybe build in a kill switch, yada yada yada.
Listen.
Make sure the fucking dinosaurs stay in the fucking cage.
One dystopian type outcome that was raised in the video is I think the bioethicists made the objection that this trend's awfully close to the pods in the Matrix.
Times fast.
What?
Bioethicists.
Did I say it right the first time?
No, you said it right the first time, but that is impossible.
I'm going out on top, baby.
That is impossible.
I'm retiring. I'm not going to say that word the rest of this episode.
One and done, baby.
So they have raised the issue that ectogenesis sounds a lot like the pods in the Matrix. Now, that's some scary shit. I can't imagine a more despotic future than that.
Instead of you being racist, we should have gone red pill, blue pill, not white pill and everything.
Yeah, but everybody knows what white pill, black pill is, David. It's either this is good for the future or this is bad for the future.
I didn't know it before you said
You interjected
red pill.
You interjected race into it unnecessarily.
I did it. No, I'm not the racist. Typical.
So anyway, yes, I think that those are all very legitimate concerns, and how we proceed forward, I don't know. I'm not in the decision-making role.
Here's CERN again.
Actually, one of the scientists...
CERN again. Here we go.
One of the scientists said, in a very can versus should way, he said something in the video, he said something to the effect of, listen, my job as a scientist is to figure out and how to do the thing practically and do it. It's up to other people to figure out, yada, yada, yada. And I'm like,
well then,
bro, once it's created,
shut the fuck up. Don't tell people that you're doing it. Be like Oppenheimer. Yes, I have this little thing over here. That if you go click, it goes boom. Maybe you shouldn't have told everybody that shit.
I think Oppenheimer was a little bit more foreboding about the potential of his creation.
Yeah, and then what happened? We Hiroshima to Nagasaki.
A lot of innocent
people. And
yeah.
all of his worries came true. So maybe you should have just been like, I don't got the math yet. And
anyway, listen, this is a highly contentious topic, which we encourage you and request you to chime in the comment section wherever you find this episode, pod or audio only or on the video platforms. Tell us why David's concerns are more legitimate and therefore the technology should be killed in its infancy, no pun intended. Or
aborted.
Yeah. or if my potential to set this highly contentious, seemingly intractable issue of abortion out of the, make it obsolete, if why that's right, and let us know. Let us know why I'm right and David's wrong. And
I know I'm wrong.
Dude,
I know I'm wrong. I get it.
No, you're gonna dominate the comment section on this one. They're gonna be like, Dane is fucking out of his mind.
All 3 comments that we're gonna get. Good.
No, this one's gonna blow.
All
right. So anyway, on the Epstein did not kill himself segment, we have a recent event that treads rather closely to the satirical title of this segment.
Like a little on the nose this week, unfortunately.
Yeah. So what happened is a guy by the name of Mark Middleton.
What a shitty name, by the way.
Was found allegedly suicided, self-unalived.
I take that back. It was a great name.
But this Mark Middleton was a prominent Arkansas businessman, and he was closely tied to the Clintons. He was one of the top advisors to Bill Clinton when he was president. And it is suggested, I haven't checked into the claims that some of the people have made, but that he was the one who actually introduced Clinton to Jeffrey Epstein. And that as an advisor in the White House, he was responsible for numerous occasions admitting Epstein into the White House. I guess you can't just walk through the front door. You probably got to check in with somebody.
Hey, I paid for that fucking thing.
Anyway.
Don't I?
Yeah.
Every goddamn year.
Anyway, so Middleton was the one who was basically the glue between Clinton and Epstein, so to speak. David, don't even. You know what? I really need to put more thought into my phrasing.
I don't want you to.
You're going to sit over there like Archer, phrasing, and if you don't actually say it, you're just going to...
Why are we not doing phrasing?
So anyway, so Middleton was found suicided in Perry County, Arkansas.
Suicided sounds like you don't believe it was a suicide.
I have my concerns. And how he was found, this is according to the Perry County Sheriff, he was found, quote, hanging from a tree with a shotgun blast through his chest. What I'll say about that is the man was dedicated.
You might call it overkill.
He wanted to get it done.
That's the legitimate definition of overkill. Just in case this shotgun blast in my chest doesn't do the trick, I'll definitely asphyxiate by hanging myself. Or maybe he just took autoerotic asphyxiation too far.
Well, the funny thing about that is not only is that a very, I haven't done a full regression analysis on the national database
Whatever the fuck that means.
On the national database of suicides to find out like what's the most common. I would venture to say that hanging yourself while shooting yourself with a shotgun probably doesn't have a whole lot of peers in the broader suicide community.
I didn't know you were going to go there with it. But yeah, I'd go ahead and say that's probably
pretty rare.
Open and shut case, Johnson. I saw this once as a rookie. Guy shot himself twice in the head and then bathed in acid afterwards. Jesus Christ.
So, listen,
happens every Tuesday.
Of course, they have plausible deniability because he was found with a table nearby. So apparently, he threw a cheap extension cord over a branch.
Who brings a table to a fucking field?
It could have been one of those fold-out card tables. I don't know. They didn't have pictures.
It's probably one of those Rubbermaid that you put out for like a family reunion.
No.
That you put all the chitlins on.
I prefer to think it was one of those little tykes. You know, the little plastic tables.
Just for a little irony.
I'm gonna need a second.
That's terrible. Just to remind him of what he did with Epstein, with all the kids. Oh, that's dark. That went from funny to dark really quick. I'm sorry. I apologize, listener and viewer.
David, the way your mind works, it scares me sometimes.
What do you think I feel? Anyway.
Okay. Anyway, so apparently he got up on this table, put the cord around his neck. David, relax over there. Put the cord around his neck and then held a shotgun out like this, I guess, and pulled the trigger and shot himself in the chest. Now, assuming you believe all of that, let me give you a quote from the Perry County Sheriff. David's already heard the quote in
The
case you're wondering.
hard-hitting detective work of Perry County, Arkansas. Can't even pronounce your fucking state right.
Great.
That's a
now we can't go back to Arkansas either.
Oh, shit.
All
No
right.
offense, guys.
I'm gonna win 48 states and then not Arkansas and Oklahoma. All right, so the Perry County Sheriff had this to say, quote, "It was very evident that the shotgun worked." David, you don't have this in front of you. I want you to read it in the Arkansas County
It
Sheriff's.
was very evident that the shotgun worked properly.
All right, so I'll just read it. All right, quote,
Please.
"It was very evident that the shotgun worked because there was not a lot of blood or anything on the scene." Wait, just before we even get into the next sentence, it was obvious the shotgun worked because there was no blood.
What was the first clue? The big fucking hole in his chest and the shotgun on the ground? That's what I'm saying. The hard hit, nothing gets by these guys. Listen,
But wait
after
a
they
minute.
finish this case, Zodiac is next. How
Now,
about that?
Listen, I've not shot a lot of human beings in the chest with a shotgun, but
I gotta think there's a lot of blood in there.
I have gone turkey hunting, blood confirmed,
You monster.
and I've seen a lot of Hollywood movies. Again, I know they're movies, but a lot of Hollywood movies where somebody gets shot with a shotgun and it's just blood everywhere. Now,
What? But hold on, before you move on, what is also in this general area? This?
I think it's that thing that pumps that stuff that we're saying wasn't on the scene all around your
and
body.
if you were still alive, they would still be like, "Hey, I gotta get this all the way out." What's
It's kind
going
of
on?
like the central factory of that whole system.
I mean, I feel like there would be some, at least some.
All right, so no blood on the scene, but that's proof positive that the shotgun worked.
Thank God.
Moving on.
Thank you, Remington.
Moving on, Sheriff.
Browning or whatever the fuck it was.
Next sentence, quote, "You can tell the shotgun blast was on his chest."
Fuck.
You can tell that because there was a hole in the chest and pellets came out the back of his back. I swear to
Just
God.
let it breathe. Let it
This
breathe.
is a
Let it breathe.
legitimate
Repeat
quote.
it and let it breathe. Just say it again. Say it again. You can tell because there was a hole in his chest and there were pellets out there.
You can tell that the shotgun blast was on his chest. You can tell that because there is a hole in his chest and pellets came out the back of his back.
The back. It's very poetic almost. He's a cunning linguist over there.
Let me get to the last sentence. The last
Please.
sentence is,
I'm sure it's a fucking knee buckler.
the last sentence is, and here's the takeaway, folks. It was definitely self-inflicted in our opinion. Now, let's set aside
Okay.
the hilarity of those first two sentences.
And bear in mind that somebody died here.
And the reason why we're
Right.
going to set them aside is not because they're hilarious, but because they are wholly irrelevant to the conclusion that it was definitely self-inflicted of our opinion. What about a bloodless shotgun blast tells you that it's self-inflicted? Nothing. What about it being in the chest because there were a hole in his chest and pellets coming about? What does that tell you about it being self-inflicted? Nothing. But from those two sentences, those two observations, he's come away with the opinion, definitely self-inflicted. Nice work, folks. Let's get home before dinner time. We don't want it to get cold. Case closed.
Oh, Jesus. I mean, if there's ever a place to definitely kill somebody and make it look like a suicide, first you'd start in a New York penitentiary under a federal max on suicide watch. That's exactly where you'd start to kill the first person. And then you'd go to Perry County, Arkansas. Apparently.
Oh, and by the way, not the full quote, but the sheriff said previously in the article, we have no idea who this guy is. He's never been to this county. We don't know why he chose to do it here. Again, that's a weird observation,
Maybe-
but I mean, yeah.
And before it's lost on all of us, what is the Clinton body count up to now?
So I looked up, this was a few years ago. This was after the last, I looked it up after the young campaign kid that died suspiciously. What was his name?
Oh, fuck.
The kid that worked on her campaign and then wound up in a drive-by or something. But he was allegedly the one who turned over information about what the Clinton campaign was doing in terms of spying and cheating during that election, yada, yada, yada. or what role they had in the Russian collusion narrative. Anyway, Seth Rich. Does that name ring a bell to you?
Yes.
That was the kid's name. Seth Rich. And so I looked it up then. So that was what, 2016, 17, something like that. And the best I could find from a few different sources, because obviously CNN's not running an article on this, was 27. Now, I don't know about you, David, but having not been a former president of the United States and then in Hillary's point a Secretary of Defense,
Yeah, you fucking
presidential
loser.
candidate, yada, yada, yada. Having not been those things, forget 27. 2 people in my general sphere, whether it's my immediate family, acquaintances, whatever, but my aura that it can be known I knew this person. If 2 people died under suspicious circumstances and I'm the only thread to them,
Again,
the sheriff from Perry County, Arkansas is going to have some questions about my connections, let alone the FBI and all other layers involved in the other Clinton didn't kill themselves instances.
Again, I forgot my point because you prattled on so
I'm sorry.
long. But it's okay. I mean,
I was.
hold on. I got it. It's back. So, again, back to the door swinging twice as hard your way. This is the one aspect where it doesn't seem to swing back twice as hard. So,
Ever.
You wanted to impeach Trump and get him thrown out of the White House because he fucked Stormy Daniels. Or even more close to the point, you wanted to impeach President Bill Clinton for getting a blowjob while he was in office and lying about it. Man, hey, define the word is. Anybody else remember that? Yeah. Anybody else old like us? Anyway, but someone gets his chest blown out.
With no blood.
With no blood, by the way. With a little Tykes table.
That is a key fact in this investigation. There was no blood from the shotgun blast to the chest.
And a fucking hangman's noose around his neck to make sure he got the job done in a field that he would definitely be found in. No further questions. Nothing. Imagine somebody that was even tied to Trump was suicided like this.
Yeah.
All the implications. But again, this apparent door doesn't swing back that way. We can just ignore another fucking Clinton campaign. We can ignore another thing that somehow another president was linked to this, and then it had a shoddy outcome. But oh well, in other news, the Boston Red Sox lost to the New York Yankees last night. Here's Tom with the weather.
Yeah, I mean, listen, so like I said, when I looked it up last time was when the Seth Rich thing happened. And since Seth Rich, obviously Epstein himself, the moniker of the segment, and now Mark Middleton have unalived themselves as well. So
how's Ghislaine doing, by the way?
If I heard, the meme, Hillary's coming in with her mustache as the first visitor.
The FedEx package. Who was that person that allegedly killed? So
if Seth was not included on that list of 27 that I found, back then they're up to 30. They've hit the triple decade mark. If he was included, then they're at 29. Either way over the 2 that any average person having this laundry list of acquaintances, friends. I don't know if there's any family members on there, but people tied very, very close to the Clintons. A lot of them have died under less than concrete. Listen, I'll put it this way. They have not died in more concrete, clear-cut suicide circumstances than a bloodless shotgun to the chest and a wire around your neck while you're doing it. They died in much less clearly suicide.
You mean with
circumstances?
30 fucking orange jumpsuits around them and one wrapped around their neck?
Yeah, and some prison guards that fell asleep and didn't
no
happen to see
camera
the
recording
camera
of anything from 1 hour before and 1 hour after.
Yeah. So listen, hey,
But yes, should have probably voted for Hillary in 2016, right?
well, listen,
It'd been a better country. She'd have run this place better.
David,
all right?
I
She'd have
want
been the first woman president.
on this issue, I want to apologize right now for our white supremacy because we just brought up a bunch of facts about those cases
Fuck.
and just said that. And I want to call in and paraphrase our Holy Mother, the savior of democracy and everything sacred about the world, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Dane, are we the white face, black face of white supremacy now?
Yes. We're terrible people.
Shit. Sorry,
and
guys.
she said something to the effect on 60 Minutes a couple years ago that people are so concerned with being factually correct that they're not concerned with being morally right. That's a paraphrase of our Holy Mother. So I just want to apologize, David. We said too many facts about the Epstein and Mark Middleton suicides.
What did
And
my feelings say about
we
that?
apologize.
What did my feeling? I should have listened to my feelings because apparently feelings are more important than actual fucking reality nowadays. But
yeah.
what do we know? We're just two dumbass podcasters.
So with that being said, let's get into the main, where we are talking in a continuation of last week's main, where we addressed the Dutch farmer protest in the Netherlands.
They're so nice.
This week we have
Huge.
a couple more uprisings, which actually, I think they may have even started before the Dutch protest. But just another example that we kind of said from episode 102 is that you're not hearing about this stuff because, like, the articles I have are from Al Jazeera and another one is from the BBC or something like that.
Isn't Al Jazeera a terrorist organization?
From Reuters. I think they were accused of, I don't know.
I'm kidding.
Of being like terrorist sympathetic during the War on Terror years or whatever. But you're not supposed to read stuff from Al Jazeera. But the point is that I'm going to international sources because CNN's coverage is going to be like mostly peaceful protests, has president go to a summer villa in the Hamptons out in Sri Lanka. Like, right. Their political protests are all things good, and American political protests are the worst days in world history. Overzealous cosplay events are tantamount to 9/11.
A certain month and a certain number of a date in that month together. Lest there be like a little blue thing. Learn more about said date and month.
But anyway, there are themes running through these international protests. And the reason why, as we said on 102, this was very important to the regime in the United States not to talk about or to downplay as much as possible is that they don't want the United States people, citizens, to be, I shouldn't say emboldened, but get any bright ideas.
What do they also call United States people that are citizens?
Deplorables and stuff?
American.
Oh.
Americans.
Well, the way our elites, especially in Washington, treat us, they don't just think of half of the population.
There's no such thing as a mother
they
anymore.
think of all of us
It's
like
a
that.
birthing person, as we all know. Because our language isn't definitive enough.
So 2 more uprisings happened recently with, again, similar themes to what happened in Canada with the trucker protests last year, what's happening now in the Netherlands, and then now Sri Lanka and Argentina to add to the list, is that whether there is some sort of global awakening, so to speak, or whether there is kind of a darker view of an early 20th century, this is how, these sort of very bad economic times are how radicals take the reins of power. And we saw in the early 20th century what they can do with that state power. And I'm hoping it's the kumbaya awakening thing and we're throwing off the chains of government. You'll find out in this segment that it's not exactly that.
Well, as we've discussed multiple times and has been brought up throughout history, is that to throw over a tyrannical government, there's certain growing pains that are involved. And if you're saying that the tyrannical government is in league with all the other governments in globalization, as the selected few will govern everybody, then we're looking. This isn't a civil. This is going to be a global civil war, is what we're kind of indicating right now.
You mean a world war?
No, a world war is when you fight another country with a bunch of other countries. Like what you've got a bunch of countries.
Oh, you're saying
over here.
all the countries are going to fight each other internally,
No,
but at the
I'm
same
saying
time?
that all the countries are going to uprise against their government at the same time. Does that make sense? Is that even possible?
Yeah, but okay, I see what you're saying. Go ahead.
So, and then the implications of that would be like if you let's just say running a fucking what's it called? Help me, Dane. Like a trial run without actually doing it. Running a
trial and error.
No. Running an experiment, just call it experiment or a test run. If
beta?
No. If all the citizens of every country uprose and overthrew their government at the same time, what the fuck would that world look like? And then vice versa, if all the governments at the same time became 5 dictating heads that controlled the entire world, I'm thinking United States, China, Great Britain, the superpowers of the world. So, like if the main superpowers of the world were dictating legalities within the entire world, what would that look like? And that's kind of what we're talking about right now.
Or what will even be worse than that is an entity that's largely seen as, even though heads of government and powerful people are constantly added, but it's not seen as a government in the way that we think of a government as a sovereign, right? So the way the classical way of thinking about government and political science in the past leading up to today is there's still always a sovereign, but who that sovereign is and how it's manifest changes. So for example, under the United States setup, there is still a sovereign power. It's just the people. It's not sitting in a head, that would be a monarchy, or it's not sitting in a government structure that has a top-down approach. So like a national structure in France, where you don't have, states with competing interests and stuff like that. You have one central government and it's top-down. The sovereignty relies in that government. In the United States, it's supposed to rely on the people. Now, David and I joked about that a little bit on the last episode, where it doesn't seem like we're really in charge, despite the government we're told that we have. So I think what you're saying is like that whole concept of sovereignty, of within these geographical borders, this entity, the people, the king, the parliament, whatever, this entity has monopoly authority, sovereignty, to decide what goes on within those geographic borders. And no other outside sovereignty can justly intervene in that. That's the way we think of international law now. But of what you're saying is that people collectively wake up to say all government is illegitimate, right? The libertarian utopia kind of thing. And they say, we don't want a sovereignty anymore, period. We just want to live free and voluntarily interact with each other. The threat of them looking to a World Economic Forum for their policy prescriptions and what they decide to adopt in their daily lives and stuff. And that's almost scarier
all roads lead to globalization.
Yeah.
If you dissolve all the lines in this world, and if the human people take over this world, and we don't have any Great Britain, we don't have United States, Canada, Mexico, nothing. We are all just living on a land that is on the world. Eventually, human nature would dictate that we had to have some people tell us what is good and what is bad. And that would eventually lead to like a whole world's government, which would just be globalization. We just kick the can down the road.
Well, but
is what we did.
That's what that's the scary part is yes. And listen, I understand this as somebody who tries to walk people through what it means to be an ANCAP. And this idea that you don't need a government, the private society, the free market can handle everything, including regulation and infrastructure and all the stuff. Like you don't need a state, and here's why. People will always say, okay, well, let's say you get your future. Won't we just wind up with a handful of warlords, Mad Max style, that just become basically de facto governments?
Just walk away. There doesn't have to be any bloodshed. Just welcome me.
To which I always say, yes, that's absolutely a possibility. And in that future, we will be exactly where we are right now. We just call it this thing, the state, that gets all of this, privileges that the rest of us don't get. And it can get away with literal murder or theft or whatever else just because it calls itself the state. Is that the same thing as a Mad Max style warlord? Absolutely. So even in the worst version of my potential future, of an ANCAP potential future, would just be what we currently have today. Why isn't it worth trying moving in that direction just to see if maybe the projection is wrong and maybe the warlords don't rise up and maybe a stateless society is a more peaceful one? I think it's worth having the discussion at least.
Dane, did this podcast just become Love, Death, and Rockets? Or robots? Excuse me. Did this podcast just become Rick and Morty?
By the way,
where like there's jokes and fun stuff, but at the end of it, you're like, we're all gonna die. Like, I thought we were supposed to. I thought I'm fucking depressed now.
I hope that I'm giving the brighter version of the future.
That's not a bright version of the future.
I just say
there's going to be human babies growing in fucking fake wombs. You're going to get suicided and they're going to go, well, you're going to get killed. And it's going to go, well, he shot himself twice in the head. What can you do? He definitely wanted off this planet. And then even if you make it through all that, you got globalism. You got a bunch of 5 guys telling you what to do. Tuesday is when you shove a rubber ducky down your mouth and you act like you're Martha Stewart. I don't know. I don't know what globalization looks like. Or if you overthrow all the fucking things that will become globalization, you eventually revert back to globalization.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very real possibility.
Shit.
It's a very real possibility. But even if, okay, so let's say it's 99% likely that the ANCAP society comes about and then it just evolves back into this situation, right? Let's say that.
This is how you get that argument that like civilization has started and stopped multiple times and reset.
Yes,
this is how we get here.
So let's say that happens and it's 99% likely that the warlord situation is going to pan out, not we remain peaceful because we don't have, a violent monopoly ruling over us and pointing nukes at all of our heads and yada, yada, yada. Even if the better version is the 1%, it's 1% likely that the positive outcome will happen. We currently sit in the 100% reality that the bad thing we think might happen is already happening now. Why wouldn't we take a chance for that 1%?
Because we have electricity, because we have Pornhub, because we have cell phones that can pull up Pornhub whenever we want. The Mad Max thing where globalization and we just have to hope that tribes, there's no electricity. If you want to stress test this theory, just say America decides or the government decides to just shut off the western or eastern seaboard's power grid. How many days until it's fucking Lord of the Flies over here? Where like a neighbor is chewing on another neighbor's skull because he dominated him and he had like a lawnmower that he wanted that still had gas in it.
Listen, I hear your objection and I have bumped up the average to 99.9%
I know, but you did it. I know you did that too. But
what I'm saying is in logical fallacy way that you cannot prove a negative. What I'm saying is,
prove a positive.
There is a tiny little chance that it will be a better future.
Flip a coin 1,000,000 times. What's the time that it just lands straight up and down, not on either, not heads, not tails, just on its rim? You're counting on that.
Listen.
Okay. Cool.
All right. Listen,
that's humanity's chance.
Here's another
humanity's chance.
Here's another soft debate that you can jump in the comment section on and tell us why.
Help us.
Why
Help
Dane?
You.
Why Dane is always the happy? I'm like the angry, cynical one. How do I wind up always on the optimistic side of it?
I'm the smiling, jokey one that hates everything quietly. You're like the guy that rants and raves, but like secretly believes in humanity and our ability. Like, we are the yin to our yangs and the bada of our beings of light beer. Anyway.
So listen, I had a lot more to get into about the specifics of what is going on. And I don't even know if we said the names of the countries for this segment, but Sri Lanka and Argentina is what we're talking about in terms of more uprisings against their own government. And, without getting into too much of the specifics in Sri Lanka, we'll link the article, the Al Jazeera article. You can read it at wndpodcast.com/103. But just some funny little threads tying between them. So remember, the Dutch farmer protest was about emission standards, which was going to make them basically cull 30% of their cattle herd if you were a farmer in the Netherlands. In a very similar fashion, the Sri Lankan government last year or a couple years ago, in 2021, banned imports of chemical fertilizers, a move that decimated staple rice crops, driving prices higher. And so what's going on is, in addition to a debt crisis in Sri Lanka, they're also having a food and just basic fuel
So they're using
necessities.
moral platitudes to elicit humanitarian catastrophe.
Crises, yeah. Literally on the brink of man-made famines, not seen since Stalin and the persecution of the kulaks in Ukraine before World War II. Not since then will we see a potential man-made famine type event of that size.
It's almost like they want it to happen, because it doesn't take a brainiologist to figure out, like, if you fuck with production, you throw a wrench in the cogs, you're gonna screw up that machine. And if you screw up that machine when we're already having problems feeding everybody in the world, let's not forget about that. There's still people starving to this day. And not just in third world countries, like in first world countries, they're starving to death. They can't afford anything. You're gonna throw a wrench in the chain or in the machine between the cogs when that's happening?
Yeah. I mean, again, it's like the analogy.
Go back and listen to Stupid or Evil, which was episode
exactly.
102.
Yeah, 102 is the exact analogy I gave in that one. Is like, are they stupid or evil? If they're stupid and they're walking around a bar just blindly throwing darts, eventually they'll hit the bullseye. If they're evil, then, in terms of falling ass backwards into the right conclusion or the right policy solution. If they're evil, that would be a seemingly more plausible explanation for why they keep arriving at these conclusions that are always pushing in the same direction. And the direction is human beings are a weed. They're a blight on Earth. They're overpopulated. We need to get rid of them. But we can't just say that, and we can't just outright come out and do it. But we're just going to subtly tinker around the edges, always arriving at policy conclusions which seem to push in the direction of human beings either being exterminated in mass events, or pushing them so much to the brink that you have political uprisings that could lead to larger, more destructive events of humanity, like global war. And again, are they just stupid and just keep falling ass backwards into all of these policy prescriptions? All of them? And not accidentally getting it right occasionally? Or are they evil? I don't know the answer to that question. I just know you probably have gathered from my phrasing of it that which direction I lean in. But it seems, I don't know, man. It's a scary prospect.
Man. Talk about leaving a little sweet treat in their mouth before we sign off.
Oh, are we signing off? We didn't even get to Argentina.
I mean, we're on the ass end of this episode.
I know.
This is
we
just digging further down this fucking depressive hole. Remember that Alice in Wonderland reference I had, the rabbit's hole? Jesus Christ, we're getting further down depressing hole.
Okay, so here's the thing about Sri Lanka and the Dutch, and that's one side of it. The other thing is now
sounded almost racist. Sri Lanka and the Dutch.
What's that joke?
It's like there's two people in this world I can't stand. People who are intolerant of other people's cultures and the Dutch.
Yeah. That's the joke. I forget where it's from, but that's the joke.
Austin Powers.
Oh, it's Austin Powers.
Gold member.
Okay. I knew we could count on you for that one. But okay, so that's the thread between the Dutch and Sri Lanka, and now the thread between Sri Lanka and Argentina. So because of the massive debt and potential oncoming famine in Sri Lanka, unless they get external help,
that they predicted that just somehow came true.
They are chanting in many respects, in the government that still remains, and in a portion of the population that stormed the Capitol, that they want the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, to step in and kind of bail out their country, give them a bunch of money. So Sri Lanka, at their stage, is asking for the IMF because it's the last resort. They don't have any other choice. Argentina, which is facing roughly 60% inflation, we have allegedly, I know it's higher, but have 9.1 in the United States, and how rough that is. They're at 60% in Argentina. And this is what a socialist lawmaker in Argentina had to say about it. Argentina is he says, Argentina is a capitalist semi-colony in the chains of the IMF. Today, we are here to say we need a second independence. Argentina must break its ties with the IMF, which is the Spanish Empire of the 21st century. And that was Juan Carlos Giordano, who is a socialist lawmaker in Argentina.
It's always Juan Carlos in Argentina, either making coffee or making demands. That's all I'm saying.
And so, again, notice that, right? Sri Lanka is at the point that they literally stormed the presidential palace and made him resign. You want to talk about January 6th? Their protest got some shit done. So, again, if we're just comparing protest to protest and legitimacy of democracy and all that kind of stuff, that's a rather important thing. But they're begging for the IMF to bail them out. And Argentina is saying, get the hell out of our country. You're a 21st century imperialist power. Those are two very different outcomes. So what does that tell you about where each of those countries are on the spectrum of desperation? I would say Sri Lanka is more desperate. They're willing to take the chains, seeing the rest of the countries around the world and what the IMF does. Give you an unpayable loan, and then when you can't pay it, they basically assume sovereignty over your country because they can dictate the internal policy to make sure that you raise the funds to pay them back. It is financial imperialism in the 21st century.
And they never fired a bullet, and they didn't drop a bomb.
Exactly. And Sri Lanka is now begging for that. And Argentina, maybe not further along in the desperation sector because they actually do produce a lot of food domestically and all that kind of stuff, is saying that the IMF, which has done this, they are a past victim of the IMF, is saying, get them out of our country. And it's always funny that coming from a socialist lawmaker, he says that this is an example of capitalism, a capitalist semi-colony in the chains of the IMF, as if people that just need to show so much that they have no idea what they're talking about is that capitalism is simply voluntary exchanges between people. Once you have a central bank that issues money and then has monopoly control over its issue, that ain't capitalist, buddy. That's a third party interjecting itself through policy into every single voluntary transaction in the whole economy. So this idea that an international bank colonizing people without firing bullets is an example of capitalism is woefully ignorant, and it leads to, well, if the socialists take over in Argentina, Venezuela's not that far away.
And it's not like we haven't done it before, and it's not like it won't happen again, but it's like a snapshot of two countries that are in roughly the same scenario, and one's choosing the blue pill to take it in a more culturally appropriate direction, and one's choosing to take the red pill. Well, the blue pill is what Jamaica did. Jamaica got its sovereignty. They took a loan from the IMF or whatever international bank they took from. And then when they couldn't pay back that debt with exceptional interest rates, they became assumed by said bank, which who owns that bank? Who's the dictator of that bank? I think it was us. Whoever dictates the global economy, pretty much.
I don't remember. They have different heads and stuff, I think.
So now they've got KFC that serves, rotten chicken to people, and they live in shitty huts, and it's become a very what would you call it? Like a industrial complex country. We put basically all of our manufacturing there because we can get cheap labor and do all that stuff. It's globalization in and of itself. It's funny that we went from one subject of globalization to another, and it seems to be more prevalent now but we should definitely focus on whether or not Amber Heard should be held accountable for her $7 million she owes Johnny Depp.
Yeah, just the last thing on that is the IMF headquarters is in Washington, D.C.
Huh.
It's
Weird.
currently run by a woman by the name of Kristalina Georgieva.
Well, look at you.
Georgieva. So, anyway, I think I'm probably getting this wrong, but I think at one point in time, a few years ago, a French woman, Christine Lagarde or something like that. I don't know if she was IMF or a different bank head. But anyway, point is that, yes, the Western world, basically, the former imperial powers, Britain, its colonies, United States, but really just kind of like also Britain, France, these governments have...
China now. China's doing it now.
Much more pull in an institution like the IMF to make sure that these, in their view, lesser states don't exactly start going their own way and doing their own thing.
Because we can't have free thought in this world. No,
exactly.
No. Anyway.
So yeah. And the last thing I'll say is, on the spectrum of desperation, the United States is not near as far as these two countries. And there's a lot of fiscal reasons for that in terms of, the United States having the world's reserve currency and all of that kind of stuff. It has a lot more economic advantages to not get down this route. But when you look at...
You said it, by the way.
Where the United States is, $30 trillion in debt, constantly bailing out the too big to fail banks, basically using their citizenry as a slush fund to enrich them and their crony-connected buddies. That's not a million miles removed from the governments that exist currently in Argentina and the one that is in the process of being toppled in Sri Lanka, et cetera. And that tells you really everything you need to know about why you have to come to Weapons and Meme Destruction podcast to hear about stuff like this, or go to international media, because the media in the United States doesn't want to talk about this at all.
I've got a silver lining for you, Dane. The date that you mentioned before that I won't repeat is I would say it's a pretty peaceful, relatively peaceful reminder
of who
had the power. A mostly peaceful reminder. Whereas in Sri Lanka and Argentina, I would love to see the numbers of people that were hurt and killed during those protests. Again, the silver lining is we are still talking. We can still figure this out. But you can't be lazy anymore. You have to do your research. You have to figure things out for yourself. You have to critically think. You can't just watch CNN or Fox News or MSNBC or whatever the fuck you're watching and just regurgitate their headlines. You have to actually think for yourself critically and say, where's my government going? They're saying things which are very flowery and nice. But what are they doing? What are they doing for me? Now it's not just time to get the surface level bullshit. Now we have to get down to the nitty gritty, because we've been surface level for so long, the nitty gritty has become rotten. And I don't want to say drain the swamp. I don't want to use fucking euphemisms like build back better. I don't want to use any of that bullshit. It's time for what truly drives this country, which is the American people, to take notice of what's truly going on there and vote accordingly. And that being said, didn't Nancy Pelosi just make a windfall sometime this week?
Yeah, she logged away one hell of an awesome NVIDIA trade.
Man.
Based on, you'll never guess, shortly after she bought a shit ton of NVIDIA, the House passed a something $50-some-odd billion semiconductor bill, which is exactly the industry that NVIDIA is.
They're fucking doing it right in front of us, and they're saying, you're not going to do anything about it, bitch. They just grabbed your girlfriend's ass in front of you and said, fuck off. What are you going to do?
Well, to cliff note David there, from a mind 10 times probably more wise than his and I's combined, it was either Plato or Aristotle that said, the price a man pays for being disinterested in public affairs is that he will be ruled by evil men. And if nothing else...
Who's that guy? Aristotle?
It was either Plato or Aristotle. I forget which one it is.
I've never heard either of them. I'll have to look them up later.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, that encapsulates the whole thing. We're not saying that everybody needs to get political overnight. And actually, I would say quite the opposite. Please do not, if you are the type of person who runs around shouting out the memes we're trying to destroy on this, because you're only engaged in tribalistic, political warfare. And we're trying to talk to the builders, the ones that if society does topple, these are going to be the people that rebuild society, hopefully better than what they just went through. That's who we're trying to talk to with this podcast. And it's easy to be like frustrated and say, okay, I'm not going to get involved in politics whatsoever. I don't want to talk about it. It doesn't interest me, whatever. Okay. But that's the Plato and Aristotle quote. So even if you don't care about it, nobody wants to be ruled by evil men. And that's what we get for the price of being disinterested. So whatever form it takes for you, maybe it's just listening to this podcast and talking to a couple friends. That's it. Because politics is downstream of culture. You have to win the hearts and minds first if you want to have any sort of societal changes. There has to be people in this country and around the world that look at the government for what it is. An illegitimate mob that gets away with everything that you and I would be thrown in cages for.
Here's the thing.
Get interested in that, and hopefully we can change it together.
I'm going to steal a line from another popular podcaster, Jocko Willink, whose main motto is discipline equals freedom. When you're disciplined, when you do things right, when you watch the edges, you're capable of doing whatever you want. If you're not disciplined, if you don't take care of yourself, if you can't stand up for yourself, if you can't protect yourself, then you've lacked discipline and you'll never be able to achieve again. All we're asking is discipline. Like, you don't have to know every little bill that gets passed. We don't want you to.
I don't.
Clearly.
The ones who vote on it don't. They don't even read the damn things.
They hire somebody that tells them what it said. Jesus
so
Christ.
No shade there.
No, exactly. But just take an interest and just watch what happens. And if somebody does something that you don't like, write it down. And then the next time you see them on a ballot, vote for the other person. That's all it is. That's all the discipline we're asking. We don't have to fucking know how to deadlift 500 pounds on the first day of working out. Just get out and break a sweat. That's all we're asking. That's the call to action.
Or the call to action is maybe none of that interests you, so you just want to throw some bones monthly to the Weapons of Meme Destruction podcast.
And
so
we'll do it for you,
we can do it for
goddammit.
you. That's what we're getting at here. We're trying to win the culture, wake up hearts and minds.
Dane's a fucking prostitute, and he wants money for all this good that he's giving you.
So listen, WPodcast.com. You just go to the support our work tab. You can do a one-time donation. You can do $5.
How would they find it first, Dane?
I just gave them the
.com.
I said WPodcast.com.
Where would they keep listening to this thing?
I know. Well, I'm going to get to that. I want money first. I'm a terrible capitalist.
Jesus God.
Or you could, look at your monthly options and whatever. Anyway, that's just one way to do it. There's
$10 a month is what? It's less than $1 a day.
Exactly. And listen, at the end of the day,
Jesus, Dane.
For free, you can just like, subscribe, and share, and then go talk to your friends about us. That's enough.
Just spread the word.
It doesn't cost no money to do that. Anyway, so they can find this particular episode at wdpodcast.com/103. Any podcast catcher, just search Weapons of Meme Destruction and look for the 103rd episode. And then also the videos, YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and link up with us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. That's not as smooth as the intro, but
it feels pretty good.
The more you like, subscribe, share, comment, and
take it again.
Because I said
the more you like and subscribe and share, there we go.
The more you do all of that, plus
nice
rate,
opt out,
comment, yada yada yada, you boost us in the algos and you help us get out to.
Or if you think we're fucking stupid, say so, and then you'll boost us in the algos anyway.
Yes. Please do that.
We're like water. We flow where we need to flow.
So this was a little shorter than last week, and I think we'll start, reining her back into 30-minute episodes, which I think we've done 5 of in our whole 103.
Maybe.
That's what's going to happen next week.
Maybe.
All right.
But with that small pittance of a goddamn guarantee, we'll see you next week for episode 104.
Thank
you. And until then, stay safe and more importantly, stay free.